Welcome back, coders. We have a brand new, very exciting video for you today. I am happy to bring you the Acer Nitro 5 2021 edition performance review, where we're going to take a deep dive into some of the performance that I was able to get out of this laptop after some first impressions. We'll be shortly bringing you a more in-depth comparison to the previous generation one, but for today, we're going to be taking a look at some good old-fashioned gameplay. Now, most of this footage is going to be captured, exclusively this footage is captured at 1440p on ultra settings. So every game you're going to be seeing today is at those settings. The first one that we're showcasing is Pubg, and there's a good reason for that. This game can be quite demanding, especially on the CPU. So it's always exciting to see that this game is not stressing the CPU at all. We're only at 37% CPU utilization at any given time. Even in firefights, it very rarely breaches 40%. Now, because I'm running it at 1440p, my GPU is being maxed out. This 3060 inside this laptop is quite impressive, but it does have some limitations. So we're getting about 80 FPS to 90 FPS while I'm recording, but that should be 90 and above when I'm not recording. The next game that we're going to be taking a look at is the Medium. This is a very demanding game that will push even some of the top-of-the-line computers to its paces. A 3060 Ti isn't going to do much better, and a full desktop CPU isn't going to do much better. I will say, though, the CPU utilization is still in that same like low 20s to high 30s, which is fantastic, but the GPU at 1440p, rendering two different scenes at the same time, is really being pushed to its max. So we're getting around 30 to 38 FPS depending on the sequence. This is with ray tracing on and ultra settings pushed to the absolute max, so probably not how I would recommend playing this game, but no matter what you do on this game, you're going to have some GPU limitations. This is just a demanding ass game. It's just one of the aspects that you'll run into. That being said, it's really fun to look at, and as you can see, this laptop is capable of pushing some very impressive things. Now, I'm pretty sure I was running DLSS in quality mode, otherwise the frame rate was completely unplayable, and I would say that that's probably true on anything but like a 3090. DLSS in quality mode or below is probably the way to go. The resolution at 1440p with that looks really great. You can see some of that ray tracing in the reflection of the cup. It's just very impressive. Highly recommend this game just from a story perspective, and it gives you a good chance to look at what this game might look like running on this Acer Nitro 5 with a Ryzen 5600H and a RTX 3060. Overall, pretty impressed. You can occasionally see things that approach 60 FPS, but I promise it will be short-lived. Stick to 30, put VSync on, try to set something in the high range and go DLSS, maybe not quality, but right below it, performance. So right here, we're also going into Crackdown 3, one of my favorite games from last gen, actually, just to get in there and have some fun in. It's really easy to pick up and play. It has all of that that great Crackdown fun where you're kind of leveling up your character by collecting orbs. Really addicting. You can kind of get lost in it. This is running at 1440p on Ultra, and again, while I'm recording, you're going to see a slight degradation of performance. So I expected this game to actually run slightly better, but what I'm finding is that on Ultra performance, this is actually one of the pretty demanding game even still. It's not going to like kill the system. You're still going to stay well above 60 in that 80 FPS range, but if you drop that down to 1080p, you're going to be in the hundreds, and if you lower your settings quite a bit, just a little bit, you could easily get 144 Hz out of this laptop with no problems at all. As you can see, the CPU utilization on this one is a lot higher. This is probably one of the highest CPU utilization games that I was able to test, but the GPU is maxed out yet again. 1440p is really pushing this laptop. 4K is probably out of the ballpark, but that's because we're dealing with a 6 gig VRAM setup. So that's kind of a quick look at some of the games and how the performance goes. Stay tuned and we'll take a look at other aspects of the laptop, including how it feels to hold in your hand, other aspects that may be pushing this one to an absolute buy, and we'll transition shortly. Enjoy the footage. Fun performance review story time. So while I was making this review, I decided to test out a quick hack to get this laptop up to 95 watts, which I'll share for you in a short video here coming out after the performance review drops. But while I did that, I was actually able to test out some new settings and compare finally the Vulkan version of Rainbow Six Siege, which was giving me some errors before. And now it no longer is. So what we're seeing here is the Vulkan version of Rainbow Six Siege running at its default native resolution. And during this run, you can see we're getting during recording, we're getting about 130 to 160, somewhere in that range, performance. Occasionally it'll breach 170, but really it kind of sticks in that 150 and below range. Now, first little caveat is that is about 20 FPS, 15 to 20 FPS lower than what it normally does when I'm not recording. So just keep that in mind because OBS does hit a bit of the CPU and GPU. That being said, I was able to also activate DLSS in quality mode, and so after you see a little bit of this footage, you're going to see the comparison to what DLSS in quality mode looks like, and honestly, visually, it's basically indistinguishable. So as I switch this over, I just want you to take note of kind of the dramatic difference in performance that we're getting, and again, that is with about 15 to 20 frames at the very top of this frame rate graph taken off because I'm recording. So keep that in mind. This is actually regularly sitting above 200 FPS in this benchmark, and honestly, it kind of blows your mind. So already you're seeing about a 15 to 25 FPS jump. Right here, we're seeing about another 20 FPS jump in this just scene right here. We're about to jump over here, another 20 to 25 FPS jump in this area, and it just kind of continues through and through. And the thing you'll probably notice in the background is the video quality doesn't look much different. So yeah, we were regularly hitting above 200 FPS without recording, and that's kind of just a massive difference. On this last scene as it pulls out, I think it was pulling like 160 on the regular mode, and 150s on the regular mode, and it pulls close to 200 when you're not recording. So as you can see, a 28 FPS average difference. The minimum FPS went up 37 FPS, and the max went 21. So just a huge dramatic difference. Highly recommend you try this out. So final thoughts on the Acer Nitro 5 with a Ryzen 5600H and an RTX 3060. Is this the laptop for you? Does the performance hold up to the standards I was expecting? Well, I gotta say, after testing about 7 to 10 different games and showing you about 4 to 5 different ones, I am incredibly impressed. Coming from the Acer Predator Helios 300 to this is a massive leap. And it really does feel like it's modern tech. I don't feel like I'm getting left behind in the dust. A couple of points that I'd like to highlight as some of like the big key characteristics about this laptop that stand out to me just on a performance perspective. First off, obviously the fact that it can push 1440p without being completely bottlenecked by that GPU is great. And the fact that at 1080p you can be pushing 200 FPS in most games is just an astronomically awesome thing to see in a laptop that cost me $1,300 with for the RGB edition. So if you go non-RGB, you can actually save yourself another $100. But obviously, I love the keyboard. Another big aspect is it does this all while maintaining insanely good thermals for a laptop. I have yet to be able to push this above the 90-degree mark on the CPU, and the GPU never gets above 75 degrees. It honestly stays somewhere in the 65 to 68 range for the GPU, even after I pushed the power limit on the TDP. So that's a huge win. And then on the CPU side, as long as you're under 90 degrees Celsius, you're probably in the clear, even though that's a little hot. But the vast majority of the time, it sits somewhere in the 78 to 85 range. So you're good there. From a user experience front, we're going to be getting into that in future reviews, as well as kind of just an overall design perspective. We'll be comparing it to the Acer Nitro 5 from the 2020 edition, as well as a couple other cool things that we'll be looking at, like its editing skill, which we're currently editing this video on it, so I can't give you those impressions quite yet. except to say it hasn't been bad. And we'll go into depth on how long it takes to render and all this stuff. But from an initial impressions perspective, a first 2 weeks of use review, this is definitely a fantastic laptop to pick up. And when we're in a GPU limited market where it's hard to get your hands on it, where sometimes GPUs in the same class can cost upwards of $700, $800, it might be just better to get an all-in-one laptop that can do very similar performance to the PC brethren. I highly recommend this laptop. Make sure you stop by the channel, like the video, please, please, please subscribe to the channel if you like what you see. Hit the bell for notifications, otherwise YouTube will ignore you. And as always, stay classy, coders.